Welcome to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on the sunrise. So very good morning to you. And I'm super excited to be here and, share or spend this day with you, especially because we are going to be talking about a lot of interesting things, okay? So we're going to be talking about things from sports to technology to basically everything that you can think of, okay? Because that's what we do right here on Relax Radio. Now, make sure you stay tuned because I have a lot of interesting conversation to have with you. I have a lot of interesting conversation to share with you. So make sure you stay tuned. But before we head into the conversation, I actually want to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, be a part of the show. All you need to do is just text me on 07852473473 or even call me up on that exact same number and you can be in touch with me, okay? So don't forget to do that because I would absolutely love to hear from you. And before we get into the conversation, Relax Radio, we talk about everything, right? From health to sports to technology, whatever it is that you want to talk about, we talk about all of it. So make sure you go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And that way you can actually, be a part of the show. You can keep yourself updated. You can always be informed about everything that happens, not just here in the United Kingdom, but also in the rest of the world as well. So make sure you do that. And don't forget to download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. That way you can actually join this conversation live anytime of the day from anywhere in the world. And, we're the only radio station that does that. So make sure you go download our app so you can listen into the conversation. Okay, but let's actually get into our conversation. You're with me, Sarah, and I will be keeping you company all the way until 9 a.m. So stay tuned because we're going to have a lot of interesting conversation, okay? And today, specifically, we're going to talk, or at least right now, we're going to be talking about young people reflecting on a year that they lost to COVID 19. Okay. And I know a lot of us actually fit into this boat. A lot of us actually lost our, not necessarily memories, but we lost an entire year due to COVID 19. Okay, so for example, I'm 20 now, right? And the 20s are all about enjoying yourself, going out, making new friends, meeting new people, and trying out different things, right? Well, guess what? The pandemic happened, and I can't do that. I literally just have to stay at home and spend all my time at home. That's what the pandemic has done for people my age, right? And I know I'm not the only one who's going through that. There are so many other young people who are experiencing the same things that I am, right? And regardless of the fact that, maybe I couldn't go out and party, for some people, there were bigger problems, there were other problems like they couldn't, provide for their families or they couldn't, support their families. They lost their jobs. So obviously, we all have different problems, right? But today we're actually going to, discuss some of these people or actually talk about some of these people who reflected their time last year, especially the year they lost during the pandemic and how they missed graduation and what they actually felt about it. Or rather felt about it, right? So that's what we are discussing. So actually, let's get into the conversation now. Now, last year was a huge standstill, not just for me, not just for you, but basically for everyone, right? There was this like huge standstill, like time literally stopped, like pause. Everything was just paused. And what happened was because we were on pause and our lives basically stopped for a while, there were a lot of delays at critical life stages, right? From things like starting college, going for internships to looking for work or even starting a family has actually caused chaos for a lot of young people. Okay. And like, your whole life, you go to school, you graduate, you go to high school, you graduate, and then you're like, oh, you know what, it's college, like this is what we have been talking about, this is the stuff you see in movies, and you're like so excited to go to college and everything. And then the pandemic just happens, and then COVID's just like, no, I don't think so. I don't think you're going to the pandemic. So, I mean, I don't think you're going to school because of the pandemic. So, no, just stay at home, sit tight and stay at home, right? That's literally what it's been. And the sad truth is that is what reality is. That's what the present situation is. And that's what a lot of us have been facing as well, right? So, obviously, a lot of us have had to make changes. We've had to postpone our lives. We've had to deal with a lot of setback. A lot of things have gotten backlogged because of the pandemic, right? So let's actually talk about some people whose lives changed, who had a hard time dealing with the pandemic, and what exactly they felt about that year. Okay, so there is someone called Timothy Shang, who is actually 21, who is actually 21 years old, right? And last year was actually supposed to be his seminal year, and obviously, like everyone else, he couldn't wait for his college graduation. And basically, when you graduate from college, you're surrounded by your friends, your family, and you're looking forward to your future. You're looking forward to finally getting that job and becoming stable. It's all like a part of being an adult. And that is something that we're all excited about. Like, look, every time we're children, we're like, oh, I wish I was an adult, or oh, I wish I was done with school so I could do this, so I could do that. And when finally like you can finally touch it, you can finally feel, understand what it is like to be an adult, it gets grabbed away from you, right? That opportunity just gets taken away from you because of the pandemic. And that's what it has done for a lot of people out there, right? And something else we need to understand, something else we need to keep in mind is the fact that, for a lot of us, even though we complained about being children when we were children and we really wanted to become adults, once you become an adult, you're just like, you know what? I really wish I was a kid. I really wish I didn't have all that many responsibilities. And I really, really wish that I didn't have to do adult things. Because I remember when I was a child, I would always go on and on and on about how much I wanted to be an adult, right? Now that I finally am an adult, I'm just like, life was so much better back then. Why did I ever want to become an adult? Because I have so many responsibilities, so many things to take care of. And sometimes, the moment you get your pay for the month, all of your money is gone because you have to spend for food, you have to pay bills, and you have to spend on so many other things that you didn't even know you had to pay for. And then you sort of begin to realize, what, like, life is so stressful, being an adult is so stressful. And that's just my opinion on this. But to get back into our conversation, actually, now Chang actually was waiting for his college graduation. He wanted to finally get the job, he wanted to celebrate it with his friends and family. But when he actually looks back on 2020, he actually won't think of graduation memories or moments with friends, because he'll actually remember a time when COVID hung over everything, right? And that's just the truth of it. For most of us, when we look back at 2020, it was just a time where there was a lot of pain, there was a lot of loss, there was a lot of insecurity, because a lot of people, a lot of us lost our jobs, we lost friends, we lost family members because of COVID. And every time we look back in time to the year 2020, that's what we all feel, right? I mean, that's definitely what I feel as well. So, what he said was that he feels like he's missing a chunk of his life. And let's be honest, your 20s are basically, the biggest thing, right? Like, you literally just exist. Or rather, the whole purpose of life is just to like live for the 20s, because the 20s are all about having fun, and it's about having, enjoying your life and doing so many different things, trying out different things as well, right? So obviously, when that happened, it obviously feels like you're missing a huge chunk of your life. You feel like there's no purpose in life, because this is the age you were supposed to be enjoying everything. But obviously, we're all stuck at home right now because of the pandemic, right? And that's just my and the way I feel, right? But obviously, we'll be talking about other people who have been feeling, the same way. They've been reflecting the memories of the past year, and they've also come up with certain thoughts and whatnot. So we will be talking about all of it. But before I actually get on to some more reflections of some other people, I would actually love it if you can get in touch with me. All you need to do is just text me on 07852473473, or you can even call me up on that same number, and we can have an amazing conversation. Tell me what you're feeling, tell me how you actually feel about COVID, or rather the past year. Tell me how you're feeling, tell me what your thoughts are. So just make sure to share them with me, and we can have a very interactive conversation. But to actually, get back into our conversation, now for more than a year, there were lonely lockdowns, we had economic turmoil, and there was a global recession that in fact disrupted a generation of teenagers and young adults at critical moments, right? Which meant that, a lot of them had to put their independence on hold, and they also had a lot of hostage, especially when it came to personal development, right? And this was a huge problem. I mean, come on, this is finally the age, you get to be independent, you get to, figure out life, explore life, and figure out what career path you want to take, right? So obviously, when COVID happened, it put a hold, it put a hold for a lot of us on a lot of things, right? And that meant that we all had to change our lives. We all had to, make huge changes, adjust to huge changes, just to sort of, adjust to everything that was going on, right? And the truth of the matter is, this global recession, the economic turmoil, it's in fact going to have long lasting effects in the future, right? Because whatever said and done, after everything goes back to normal, after, things start slowly going back to normal and we start coming back to how our life was, it's going to have a lot of impact, especially on younger people, because in terms of them finding jobs, in terms of their mental health, it's really going to affect them. And we've already seen that it has affected them as well, right? So obviously, in instances like that, it's important for you to sort of, or rather, it's important for us to keep that in mind, for us to remember the fact that even though, this is something that is currently happening, the effects of the pandemic will be obviously felt in the long term, right? It's in a few more months, in a few more years, that we will finally begin to feel the fact that there are so many things that happened during the pandemic that is actually affecting the future, right? So obviously, we need to keep that in mind as well. However, having said that, there is this huge vaccination campaign that is going around, not just here in the United Kingdom, but also all around the world as well. And I think that's something that we can all be happy about, something that we can all be, hopeful about, because we know once everyone's vaccinated, things are obviously slowly getting back to normal. But it also means that, we will have much better immunity, we will have much better protection. And because of things like that, it's definitely going to help us come to terms with everything that happened, right? So because of that, for a lot of people whose milestones in life got robbed, their opportunities, their connections got lost, it's a lot of pain, and it's a lot of grief and a lot of loss when they're reflecting on the past year. Now make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're actually going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking to you about all these young people and what they actually felt last year because of the pandemic. So make sure you stay tuned.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be, so that there's a goal, and then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this basic cash flow projection calculations. And it's what we use in financial planning all the time. What we say to clients is we say, okay, what is your goal? What is your objective? Where do you want to go to? And we discuss that in a lot of detail and over most of the meeting. And then the rest of it is saying, okay, in your exact circumstances, with your risk profile, with how you feel about investments and pensions and taxes and where you are and who you work with, and your education level or your lack of education or how involved you want to be. There's a lot of variables that we take into account, and then we say, okay, here's a plan. You start like this, that's great. And then we review it all the time. And we say, okay, we need to increase it, we're on track, we're not, this is what is happening. Because remember, when you're dealing with assets, the valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday, and what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. So that's a struggle. Yeah. So there are strategies everywhere from £50 a week up to £100 million, and they're different. Right? They range differently from everyone, but and from country to country, to be fair. Different countries have different tax laws, so different vehicles. But from your point of view, at the sort of normal end, I'm not going to call it the low end because I'm in that boat as well. It's as tax efficient as you can get it. That's where you start. You use all the tax efficiencies, and then you step up into different things.
Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise, and I'm super excited to be here on this beautiful Wednesday morning because we have a lot of interesting things to be talking about all the way until 9 a.m. right here on the Sunrise. Now you're tuned into Relaks Radio, and we talk about a lot of different things. We talk about a lot of interesting things as well, so make sure you stay tuned because we have a lot of conversation left to continue. Right now, earlier we were just talking about, or rather we were looking back on different people, or the different memories that people had of last year and the sort of reflections that they had regarding last year. And obviously, we all had different thoughts about last year, especially because of COVID-19, because of how things changed and how we all lost important milestones in our life because of COVID-19. So obviously that's what we're talking about, and I'm very excited to be here. But before we head back into our conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can in fact get in touch with us. All you need to do is just text me on 07852473473 to share your thoughts and ideas, and I would absolutely love to hear whatever it is that you have to say regarding this, right? If you're someone young, if you missed out on an important milestone, important opportunity because of the pandemic, make sure to text me and let me know how you feel. Let me know what your thoughts on. Let me know what you felt at that exact moment, right? Because I know this topic is very relatable to a lot of us. It's very relatable to me as well. So that's why, we're having this conversation today. Now, I also want to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. We go as Relax Radio, and that way you can actually stay updated and informed about everything that happens, not just here in the United Kingdom, but also all around the world as well. So don't forget to do that. And don't forget to download our app either, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store, which means that you can listen in from either your iOS device or even your Android device. And that way you can always stay tuned and be a part of this conversation. So don't forget to do that. But right now, let's actually head back into the conversation. Now, what AJ Lawrence had to say about the pandemic was that he felt cheated, okay? Because buying a tuxedo, renting a limo, right there in Charlotte, North Carolina, he was very, very excited for for quintessential moments of senior prom, right? And let's face it, especially if you live there and prom is something that everyone looks forward to, right? It's like one of the biggest moments in your entire life, and it's always about having fun. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Obviously, we've all been there. We're all excited for prom, right? And what he said was that he wanted more memories. He just needed more memories because last year he couldn't make many memories. And his mom also, what he said when he was talking about it, and what he said when he, or rather what he said he felt, was that his mom will actually never get to help him pick out a suit for the dance, or she won't even see him receive his high school diploma with all that pomp and circumstance, right? And that's what high school is all about. You want to go there, you want to get your diploma, you want to go to prom, you want your parents to be there to watch you get that diploma. And a lot of people work hard for it as well, right? So for AJ Lawrence, that didn't actually happen because of the pandemic. So even though he's someone who's not that big on attention, he actually let her throw him a drive-through graduation party to mark the occasion, okay? And he also acknowledged the fact that she herself missed out on some stuff too, right? Now, Lawrence actually spent last summer mostly at home, and the 2-week paid internship that he had lined up at some accounting firm was actually rolled back to a 2-day virtual leadership conference. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, right? Because a lot of us had so many plans, a lot of us had internships that we were going to go for, and ultimately all those internships, all those plans just ended up being virtual, and it was just a 2-day 3-day thing that that actually that was just finished online. So obviously, it's hard to be in that situation, especially if it's something you're excited for, because like you're excited for it, right? You definitely want to go there, you want to meet all these new people, you want to know what it feels like to actually be in an internship, to have a job and whatnot. And then all of that suddenly just gets cut off because of the pandemic. So obviously he missed out on a lot of stuff as well, and it was in fact saddening and also depressing, I'd put it that way. Not necessarily the word depressing, but rather demotivating, right? Because this is huge, and like no matter how many times I say it, or no matter how many people say it, you're moving on with your life, becoming an adult, growing up, doing adult things, that is something that is phenomenal. It's monumental in your life. Like, that's an important milestone in your life. So what happens when you don't get to experience that? I mean, obviously dealing with the fact that you don't get to experience it, dealing with the fact that you don't get to share and make memories with your friends, and your parents also don't get to share those memories with you. It's in fact quite heartbreaking, right? So that is what he felt. Now, like I said, he basically had this whole internship plan, but that never happened either. And his family also was actually going to travel for the first time in a long time, and they were going to take a beach trip to Florida, which eventually got canceled too. So what happened finally was he started his first year at the North Carolina State University in August, where he was actually moved into an apartment suite with 3 other roommates. And while he was doing his classes, it actually hit him that he was actually living through a pandemic. He sat in these crowded rooms where he couldn't see anyone's faces behind their masks. And that's when it hit him, hey, you know what, like, I'm living through a pandemic. It is, in fact, a significant historical moment, right? And it's a monumental historical moment as well. However, while it is something significant in history, it's also significant for a lot of us because that's a year we lost a lot of opportunities that we got. It's a year that we couldn't reach some of the milestones in our lives, right? So obviously that's what he felt, and that's how a lot of other people felt as well. And what's important is that all of his housemates in fact took all the health regulations seriously. They were wearing masks and they were sanitizing, but regardless of that, they still got sent home anyway. And this was just mere weeks into the semester because COVID clusters, in fact, derailed the university's safety plans, right? And I think that's what happened in a lot of other places as well. You had all of these plans, man. You were ready. Everyone was taking the necessary precautions, but there would always be that one person who doesn't go by the precautions, who doesn't follow the rules and regulations, and then that would eventually lead to a COVID cluster and universities being shut down and children being sent home, right? And that's actually what happened, not just here in the United Kingdom. It happened especially in the United States, and we saw that because regardless of the fact that there was a pandemic going around, that people were dying, we saw some kids, some people still going out and partying and having fun. And I was just thinking to myself, what are you doing? You're putting so many different people at risk. Putting everyone at risk, all just to enjoy yourself, and that just did not make any sense to me, right? I get it. I get that college life is all about having fun, it's about education, it's about living that life, but also at the same time, you can't live that life if you're putting everyone else at risk, right? I mean, sure, as soon as the pandemic is done, when everything is back to normal, when people are moving back to their normal lives, and that it's much much safer to be out and not wear a mask, then sure, that's a good time to be having fun. But obviously not in the middle of a pandemic, when there are COVID clusters, when people are dying, and we don't really know how. And at that point, we none of us actually knew how the pandemic worked, or we didn't know how the virus worked either, right? So there was a lot of uncertainties and doubts at that time, and regardless of all of that, people still refused to take those precautions that they had to take. Okay. And what Lawrence says is that he actually likes to joke around and say it was just like another summer camp. But actually, as an artist, he thought that he would meet new people and he would get hands on help, and it would practice alongside the watchful eyes of the teachers at college. But what actually happened was that he spent his first semester working from his kitchen table at home. Okay. And the truth is, that's been the reality for a lot of us, right? We've all had to work from our kitchen table at home, or even, some other table at home, or in your room, or whatever it is. Now we have someone saying hello there. Well, hello, welcome to the show. I'm very very excited that you're here, and I'm very excited that you are a part of this conversation. We're having a conversation about young people and their reflection, or how they feel about the past year, especially because of COVID, and how a lot of them miss the important milestones because of COVID. So that's a conversation we're having, and I'm very very excited that you could join in as well. If any of you want to get in touch with me, make sure you text me on 078 to get in touch with me and share your thoughts and your experiences and ideas with me. Okay. But to get back into our conversation, to get back into Lawrence and how he actually felt, what actually happened was that he basically spent the first semester of his senior year, or of his year at college. Basically what he did was he basically just sat in front of the computer, and that's how he learned, right? It's just staring into a computer screen for hours on end. And that's what we have all been doing as well. You, me, we've all been staring into, or rather into, computer screens for hours on end. And obviously it's taken a toll on our health as well, but also in terms of our mental health, in terms of how exactly we process things, and how exactly we're going to move past the pandemic. It's actually affected us in a very negative and detrimental way as well, right? And when he could finally actually return to campus in the winter, his teacher and many of his peers actually hadn't come back yet. And what he had to say was, I'm kind of bad at socializing, and lamenting the loss of in person interactions where he may have had a better chance of meeting people actually, really got to him. Because, like I said, your young years, as soon as you become an adult, your 20s, it's all about meeting people, it's about making new friends, it's about doing all of those those crazy things that you're supposed to be doing at that age, right? And because of the pandemic, because all of these things were shut down and you could only have limited amounts of people in limited places, it was obviously very, very hard for people who like Lawrence are in fact bad at socializing to make new friends, right? Because if you're bad at making friends in person, then obviously you're not going to be any better at it online, right? And that's something I can relate to as well, as someone who loves socializing, who loves meeting new people and getting to know new people. It was very, very hard for me to come to terms with the fact that, everything is shut down. I can only meet my friends at a certain point in time, and even then I have to be very, very careful, and I can't hug my friends and hang out with them the same way I used to. So it's actually very, very hard for a lot of us, because we've all had to struggle with, trying to find our way through the pandemic, trying to adjust to these new changes and so many different things, right? Now make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're actually going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking to you about young people and how they actually felt about the pandemic last year.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense.
They can't accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Well, you didn't do very well. And they get upset, and when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young, well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports, and if I had a bad game, for example, he'd say to me, "You had one to forget."
That's it. Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, yeah, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, "You had one to forget. Get over it." And that was it. So I dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, "You've had one to forget," God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Oh, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid. I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Welcome back to the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on the Sunrise. Now you're tuned into Relax Radio, and I'm very, very excited to be here because we're having a very important and interesting conversation about how young people felt during during last year, especially during COVID, how we all had to make a whole new bunch of adjustments, and how it was actually, quite tough and quite hard for a lot of us to actually think about it, looking back, because we lost out on some of the most important moments of our lives. We lost out on some of the most important memories that we make with people. And because of that, it was actually, it's quite depressing to actually look back on last year. And especially as someone who is considered a young person, even my experiences have been mostly limited to just staying at home. Really, that's what I've been doing. I've just been sitting on my chair at home and just been staring into my computer screen. And that's what my experience about the 20s has been, right? I mean, obviously, there are so many people out there like, oh, you know what? I did this when I was 20. I did that when I was 20. I went on trips with my friends. We went on different sort of vacations and we had so much of fun. Well, you want to know what I did? I was just sitting at home because the pandemic happened. Like, that's literally what I was doing, right? Because I was afraid of everything. I was afraid that if I went out, I would come back, and when I came back, I would infect my family, because I never know. I mean, you never know what you come in contact with, right? And if anything, that's what the past year has taught me. Like, I've become so paranoid because I feel like every time I go out, I'm bringing back I'm bringing back germs, I'm bringing back a lot of other microorganisms that might actually result in my family getting sick, right? So obviously, I'm very paranoid when I go out, and I know I'm not the only one who's just scared of everything, okay? Because Liz Siegfried also gets, she's also developed this fear where she's afraid of everything, right? Now, she's someone who actually gets sick a lot, especially during the pandemic. She assumed that every time she got sick, it was COVID 19. And believe me, she's not the only one, right? We've all been there in that place. The moment you feel, a sore throat building up, the moment your nose feels runny, automatically in your head, you're like, oh my God, I have COVID, I have COVID. I need to go get checked, right? And I know that we've all been there. And especially every time you develop a cold or a cough, you think it's COVID. Even though you've taken all these precautions, you're still thinking to yourself, look, you know what? I'm probably going to get COVID. I probably have it right now. So for her, what happened was every time that she got sick, she was in fact very, very worried because she thought that it was, she thought that it was COVID 19. So tonsillitis, colds, runny noses. Once those symptoms hit, Siegfried actually would quarantine inside her room and not let anyone see her. And sometimes she convinced herself that she had already exposed her entire family to the deadly virus. Okay, and that is the level of paranoia, that is the level of fear that a lot of us had, especially in the middle of this pandemic, right? And it's safe to say that we also felt guilty when we went out, or we would feel so bad when we went out, because we'd always think, look, when I come back home, I could potentially be putting my entire family's lives at risk, right? So that's what Siegfried felt as well. And she was always thinking, how do I make sure that no one gets hurt? How do I make sure that everyone is okay? And COVID 19 has been a nightmare scenario for Siegfried, who's actually a college student at the University of Vermont. And she's actually much better at taking care of other people than of herself. And I think I can relate to that a lot as well. I'm so much better at taking care of other people, giving other people advice. But when it comes to taking care of myself, I'm not the best at it. And that's not something I'm proud of, obviously, but it is something I'm working on as well. You have to be able to take care of yourself, you have to be able to prioritize yourself, right? So that is something that I've been working on as well. But for Siegfried, who is actually much better at taking care of other people than herself, this has actually been really, really bad for her, right? And the reason is because since or rather since March of last year, she basically sacrificed her job at the local grocery store, and she worried about losing friends from a distance. And at times she also became a shut-in because she was too anxious or too afraid to attend in-person events or classes. Okay, and she felt like it was a punch to the gut, okay? Because her world basically came crashing down. It was this fear of everything. She was afraid of touching things, she was afraid of seeing people, she was afraid of going out. And I know we have all been in that same situation, right? We've all been in that same instance because we're so scared that the moment we head out, we're probably going to put the rest of our family in danger. So we don't go out, we don't meet our friends, we don't touch things, and we don't hang out with people, right? And essentially, in a way, it just looks like you're cutting yourself out from the entire world, from the rest of the world. You're cutting out your friends, you're cutting out your life, just to make sure that you and your family is safe. But there are a lot of other people out there who obviously don't see it that way. There are other people out there who are just going to assume that you're just cutting them out of your life, right? And that's what a lot of other people are going to say, or that's what they're going to feel. And the thing is, the truth is, you can't actually change the way people see you or change the way people think about you. But obviously, if it's your closest friends that are making you feel that way, then you feel terrible, right? Because you've been friends for so long. Like, obviously, if my best friend, stopped talking to me all of a sudden, stopped, wanting to see me and whatnot, I would feel so bad. And I mean, obviously I would confront her and ask her why, but I would also feel bad. And I know that, any normal human being would feel that exact same way, right? That's just how we work, that's just how it all is. So for her, her world basically came crashing down. And that's a feeling that all of us can relate to as well, right? We did feel like our worlds came crashing down because we were afraid of touching people, we were afraid of seeing people, we were afraid of the pandemic, we were so paranoid. And every time you get sick, you'd get so anxious because you thought that you have coronavirus, right? Now, she actually wasn't a germaphobe before, but the health crisis has made her into one. And at some point, she actually stopped touching doors and started dousing her phone in hand sanitizer. Now, I have to say, I'm guilty of that too. I do douse my phone in sanitizer all the time. But the reason I do that is obviously because it's your phone, right? You take your phone everywhere, you touch your phone all the time, and wherever it is that you go, your phone is always with you. So there is a higher chance that your phone actually has a lot of germs. And if this isn't something that you've thought about before, now is actually a good time to think about it, because your phone has a lot of germs wherever it is that you go, because you take it with you everywhere, right? So it's important for you to make sure that you clean your phone once in a while, maybe not douse it in sanitizer the same way I do. Okay. And she even wiped her car often and became concerned that surfaces as seemingly benign as a coin would also carry the disease. Okay. And the truth is, when you become so afraid, when you're so scared, you start doing things that you don't even realize you're doing. Sometimes it can be something like unconsciously wiping your phone, right? Not unconsciously, but not intentionally. It's just happening and you don't realize it until you look at it and you realize, oh, I'm wiping my phone and this is something I don't normally do. So what happens is, you start doing these things that you don't even realize you're doing because of the fear that you have, and because you've been doing them for so long, right? And it's been very, very hard for her to live with the fact that a large chunk of her university experience has actually been co-opted. Even with so much of her life left, you're told countless times that college is the best years of your life. Because I've definitely heard it and you've heard it too, right? We've always hear our parents saying, oh, the college, your college years are the best years of your life. You make new friends, you get to know new people, and that's like the time you get to know so many things about yourself. That's the time you get to experience, different experiences, and obviously go through different things as well. So in instances like that, when you're constantly told that college is in fact one of the best experiences of your life, but then when you're afraid to live because of the pandemic, it's this, moment where it's hard for you to make a choice, right? You're at a standstill because obviously you have to enjoy college life, but also you need to be safe and make sure you're not putting everyone else in danger. Okay. And the university's hardline rules have also made it hard for Siegfried, because she's had to mitigate this COVID-19 virus, and students could actually be kicked out of the university for violating any of those rules. So it actually made matters much, much worse for her as well, because Siegfried wasn't actually allowed to see her next door neighbor or even have visitors other than her roommates. And the thing is, she couldn't even practice her American Sign Language class outside without the risk of being yelled at or fined, because it's impossible to make the necessary facial expressions while wearing a mask. Okay, so in terms of people with disabilities, especially if you're a young person with disabilities, or you're taking a class to help disabled people, to converse, to talk to them and whatnot, it's definitely going to be a much harder experience for you, especially when you use your facial expressions and your gestures to pass the message across, right? And she so badly wanted to flip a switch. She wanted things to go back to normal. She wanted all of this to just stop happening. But this fear, this panic, the trauma of the past year, it's definitely not something we can ignore. We can't just ignore the fact that so many things change, that so many different things happen. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's this whole experience of coming to terms with it. It's this whole experience of being okay with what happened, and just telling yourself, look, I did miss out on a huge part of my university life. I did miss out a huge chunk of my college life, but I have the rest of my life to sort of make up for it, right? And it's easier said than done. It's definitely easier said than done. I know it's so much more easier just to tell yourself, look, I can make up for it for the rest with the rest of my life. But the truth is, those years in the rest of your life and the years that you missed are definitely not the same, right? Especially after the pandemic, you've had more responsibility. You are more aware, you're more alert about people. You actually care about whether you've sanitized your hands or not. You care about wearing a mask. And it's a bit hard to be carefree and act like nothing in the world is wrong when everything in the world is wrong, right? I mean, it's very easy to actually, pretend like nothing is wrong. But in reality, the longer you pretend, the harder it gets for you to accept that, things really don't look that great at this point of time. Right. But the truth is, having said all of that, we can still get past this, right? This is why humans are, in fact, resilient. We can adapt to change very easily, and we evolve so easily is because we can adapt to change, right? So this is just a process of accepting things, coming to terms with it, and eventually telling yourself, look, it's not your fault. You did not see the pandemic coming, so there's nothing you could have done to actually avoid it, or there's nothing you could have done to even control it, because this is something that's beyond your control, right? Now, make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're actually going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to keep talking about all these memories, all the reflections that people have had of the past year. So make sure you stay tuned.
Cycling in London is not child's play. How to be a better cyclist. Listen to my show, only on Relaks Radio. I'm Kevin. Join me every Thursday, 5 p.m. Look forward to seeing you. And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh, so that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, got me thinking. You want to stand out. Why do you want to stand out though so much, especially with these kind of shirts when you're riding? There must be a purpose behind it, right?
Well, when you say a purpose, Nick, what I do, I wear the shirts, mainly one because they're nice and bright, so they make me visible, especially if I'm riding on the road.
Okay. Yeah, that's very important, right? Because you want cars, yeah.
Very important. And also, like, people see me in like cafes, and perhaps I shouldn't be saying this on here, I suppose, but in the bar afterwards.
All right.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh, so that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, you look like a guy who would do.
You know me too well. You know me too well, Nick.
welcome back to the conversation. You're tuned in to Relax Radio with me, Sarah, and you're tuned into the sunrise as well. I'm very, very excited to be here because we're having a very important conversation about memories, conversation about how our lives changed so much during the past year and how we ourselves can, how when we look back on it, it makes us demotivated, it makes us stressed out, it makes us anxious because we remember a year when a lot of the things in our life actually changed, right? And I don't know if it changed for the better or for the worse, and I think it's still too early to tell. But regardless of whatever happened, there was still a lot of change that we had to go through. And we're talking about young people and their reflections of the past year, which was obviously 2020. That's what we're talking about. So make sure you stay tuned to Relax Radio because I know this is something that a lot of us can relate to, right? So join the conversation, be a part of the conversation. All you need to do is just text me on 07852473473 because I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear your opinions, and I want to know what you think about this as well. Okay. And having said that, don't forget to go follow us on our socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. If you're someone who loves being informed, if you're someone who loves being updated about anything and everything that happens in the world, the best thing for you to do is actually to go follow us on our socials, right? Because it's definitely going to keep you updated on the latest, not just here in the United Kingdom, but in fact all around the world as well. Okay. It's definitely going to help you have a lot of knowledge on business, health, economics, science, technology, whatever it is. You can always find out more on our socials, and don't forget to download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. you know you can definitely listen in from anywhere in the world at any time of the day, and I think that's one of the best feelings, right? So make sure to actually go follow us on our socials, to download our app, and to get in touch with me because it's definitely going to help not just you but also me as well. Okay. But now let's actually get back into the conversation. Now, for some other people, I mean, obviously we talked about how a lot of people felt like they were missing a huge chunk of their lives. They felt like they couldn't make enough memories and they wanted more memories. They were afraid of everything. But right now, let's actually talk about why it's hard to move on, right? Because in the end, actually what happened, in terms of Chang, obviously, was he decided to opt out of his virtual graduation ceremony. Okay. And why he did this was he felt like it would be more upsetting. He says, remembering his reasoning, right? Because he didn't want to go and have thoughts like, oh, this is the memory I'll have of my graduation. And Chang had, in fact, signed a lease in Boston pre pandemic as he entered the workforce post college. And he desperately trying to find something even as the job market flatlined. Okay. And this is something that a lot of us have been doing as well, right? We've obviously been trying to find jobs, we've been trying to find something in the job market, even though we know that the job market has been flatlining, because we want to be independent, we want to get that job, we want to move out and do the things that we normal adults do, right? So obviously he wanted to do that. And finally, after trying so much, what actually happened is he landed a contract role working with Excel sheets and data. And if you actually think about it, and if you consider all of the other things that were happening in the rest of the world, this was actually God sent, right? Like, finally, after all of this hard work, after all of this, I finally got a job. I finally have a job. So obviously, it felt like it was God sent for him, right? And what happened was, fast forward to 2 months, his contractor actually called to tell him that he was being let go because of the budget cuts, right? And budget cuts were something else that a lot of people had to go through as well, because they weren't making enough profit, because things had changed, and you couldn't actually get that same amount of profit and that same level of productivity because of the pandemic. There were budget cuts. And when budget cuts happened, what happened actually was a lot of people lost their jobs. You were just asked to, quit your job. You were just asked to leave your job. And that's what happened to Timothy Chang as well, right? He was told to let go of, he was told that he was being let go from his job. And then when he heard it, he was like, oh, this has to be some kind of joke. And that is the initial reaction that any of us would have, right? Because if you suddenly get that call and, they're like, oh, we have to let you go because you lost your job, you're going to be like, what, you're joking, right? This is not really happening, right? Because it is shocking. It's in fact shocking that all of a sudden, you just have to let go of your job. And after he quit his job, obviously, because he was being, he was told that he needed to go, his days began to feel empty and they were devoid of purpose or meaning. Now this has in fact been a predominant feeling in the past year, and not just for young people but also for a lot of people as well, right? Because like, you go to sleep and you feel so like fed up and tired and done with your life, like that's how I felt. Like I would literally just wake up every day and my face would literally just look like this. Like that's how I would look like every day of my life. I mean, not every day of my life, but obviously during the past few days. And then once I found a job and once I, things started looking a bit better, I felt better. But at that point in life, after you're done with, you've graduated from college, you're not really dependent anymore, you're technically an adult. And when you can't find that job, or you do find a job and they finally tell you, you can't work anymore because of the pandemic, you're going to feel like your life has no purpose. You're going to feel like there is no meaning to your life, because you're literally told all, say 20, 19 years of your life that your purpose in life is to find a job. Your purpose in life is to get a good job so you can earn for your family. You can earn enough so you can start your own family and whatnot, right? And when you lose that job that is your first job, you're thinking to yourself, this is crazy. No way am I going to feel like I have any purpose in life, because the moment you start working, you lose it. It's like you almost catch it and then it just falls through your fingers. Like that's literally what it feels like, right? So that's what he felt, because he would wake up and realize, I don't have to go to work today. And he would just think, what do I do now? Right. And that's a question that a lot of us had. We would just sit and think, what actually do I do now? And eventually he got a new job. But after his last experience, last fall, a part of him is still worried that it won't last, right? A part of us, even though we have jobs right now, or a lot of young people out there, even though we have our jobs right now, what actually is happening is at the back of our heads, we feel like we're going to lose that job. We're not going to have that job because of the fact that it might easily be taken away from you. And because we've been through an experience like that in the past, a lot of us don't really feel secure in our jobs, because we know that we can lose our job at any moment. Like that's possible. It's not something impossible, right? And what he felt, and I think what a lot of us feel, is that there's this anxiousness at the back of our heads. We're thinking, oh, something bad is definitely going to happen. I'm definitely going to lose my job. So that anxiousness at the back of your head always exists. Now, even as his work life improved, Chang is in fact Korean American, right? And he dealt with yet another concern, and that was the rising anti-Asian hate. Now, it's important for us to actually talk about the rising anti-Asian hate, or the rising hate in general, because that has been dominant a lot, not just in the United States of America, but here in the United Kingdom as well, right? There is in fact a lot of racism, and no matter how much we try to deny it, there is in fact racism, and people are discriminated largely on a day-to-day basis. Okay, but for Chang, who is actually Korean American, he actually felt this much differently, because prominent figures such as Donald Trump in fact capitalized on the virus to spread xenophobia. Okay, because how many times did you hear Donald Trump calling it the China virus, the Chinese virus, the Kung Flu? And those things actually have a very negative impact, because Asian people were being verbally attacked, they were being spat on, they were being physically harassed. And Chang even wondered whether his grandparents could go on walks or even to the grocery store without someone hurting them. And that's how real and that's how traumatic that level of hate, that level of pain was, and that level of discrimination was. Because if you have prominent people like your president obviously spewing hate, saying things like that, it's going to be very hard for people of that minority or that ethnicity who live in that country to survive, because they're going to be subjected to attacks of racism. right? And he also kept thinking, it's not that hard to think that it could happen to him as well. He's Korean American after all. He's considered Asian after all. So what exactly would stop them from abusing him, from attacking him, right? And that was a huge concern that he had as well. So if you were a young person living through the pandemic, these are some things that we can all relate to. Now there is also Alejandro Roldan, who actually lost his wife lost their baby due to a miscarriage that she had, and then he lost his job, and then both his wife and his both him and his wife actually contracted COVID-19. And obviously because of that, he lost his job again. So these are just a few stories, a few people, right? But if we actually think about it, there are so many people out there in the world who were affected by the pandemic in the exact same way. They also went through similar situations. They went through terrible situations. They're scared. They feel like they have a lot of anxiety at the back of their heads in terms of their jobs, in terms of security in their life, and stability in their life. Those are just a few experience this conversation was just a few experiences of a few people. So it's definitely scary. It's definitely a whole new world out there, just like in Aladdin, whole new world. But it's actually a whole new world out there. So many different things that we need to get used to, so many different things that we still have to come to terms with. But I am hopeful. I have hope, and I think that we will all get through it. I think that we will all eventually come to terms with it. So that's something to be happy about, something to be grateful for as well, right? So right now I'm actually going to end this broadcast, because we will be back in a few minutes to talk to you about what exactly do we do as normalcy returns but the Delta variant surges, right? So make sure you stay tuned, because I will be back in a few minutes to keep talking to you about it.